Hi, I'm Sara, and this is the Amphibian Press podcast. And today we're switching it up a little bit in an effort to perfect our interviewing strategy and talk a little bit about our own books. We're interviewing each other. So I'll be interviewing Marissa Frosch, and she's here as Cameron J Quinn, author of the Starsborough Chronicles. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your series?
So, I started writing when I was about 6, and through that process, no, I'm not even joking. I really started writing. Like, I had a million books. I think it was an entire series about this little girl who was abused by her mother and saved by animals and then lived in the woods. No, my mother was not abusive. That's
Your
the
mom's
first
great.
question people ask. I don't know why I wrote it. I guess I needed her home life to be so terrible that she'd have a reason to go live in the woods with the
Mm-hmm.
animals. So that's what happened. Um, and then it morphed into like this fairy stories about this fairy princess, and she was literally a fairy like the size of a flower, um, and the main character in that story eventually morphed into Zeke Devorty, who was the main character of a fantasy series that I then worked on all throughout high school, and you might recognize the name Devorty because it's Zurich and Trent's dad. And I do have plans of writing that fantasy series, but it's kind of on the back burner. Um, and I think it would just be kind of fun to see it come to fruition, considering its origins as like I was in elementary school when I first came up with the character.
Hopefully with some revisions, maybe.
A lot. Well, I've lost the computer that I did the first draft on, and I still have a printed copy somewhere. Although it might have gotten lost in moving, but so there is a chance that there's pieces of it out there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I pretty much have to start over. um, but so I decided in 2011 when Sara actually was talking about publishing her book, and I realized maybe this is something I could actually do. I started thinking about something that I thought would actually be popular enough for people to want to read, and I wasn't sure about fantasy. I don't read a lot of fantasy, so it wasn't a great place for me to really start. Um, so I decided, since the original one was technically Portal Fantasy, and the world was connected to ours, it's just an alternate dimension, that I would have Zeke and Marina's children be the main characters of this universe. And I decided to have them ripped out of their mother's arms when they were very little and stolen through a portal, and then the portal was closed.
The
So
children in your books.
yeah, I'm sorry. They had such like perfect mom and dad too. They would have, had a wonderful childhood. Um,
Can't let that go on. Can't let that go
nope,
on.
nope, no perfect childhoods. So from that, I started thinking about how that would affect them, and I also have a lot of people in my life that have kind of difficult relationships with their mothers, or their mothers died when they were young, or um, and I've kind of been able to see how that affects them, men in particular, versus someone who had, kind of a really good mom and a really good upbringing. So I decided to kind of mess with it and show how it can mess with you being away from your parents, with Zurich. So he's a little bit, he's a womanizer, and he's, kind of a stereotypical bad boy, but deep down he doesn't want to mistreat anyone, and he's terrified of being alone, but he's terrified of letting someone in. And then you have his brother Trent, who was only 2 when he was taken, so he really doesn't remember his mom. um, and he's more of like a sweet kind of I'm not gonna jump into any relationships because I want it to mean something, and like kind of a romantic,
Mm-hmm.
which is, it's fun to write the differences. So that's been fun. And then I have, because we have to have strong female characters, I have Detective Morgan, Jennifer Morgan, who finds out about them when she arrests Zurich for murder. and finds out that what she has him on film murdering is actually not human, and it's something that's been kidnapping teenage to college age girls, and that's how to get arrested. That's how that starts.
Now, you write them in episodes. Um, did the format happen first before you started to write it, or as you were writing, did you realize like, oh, this is better as like smaller sections?
I'm so glad you asked me that because it was kind of an interesting like my process. So at first I was like, I'm gonna write Zurich's book, and everything that I read was romance at this point. So I was like, I'm gonna write Zurich's book, and then I was like, well, he doesn't really end up with Morgan, at least not anytime soon. So I was a little bit confused about the timeline, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna write Trent's book, and these things are gonna happen, but Zurich isn't with anybody, so it has to be before his book, but it can't be because of these reasons. And literally, this is like as I'm writing, I'm like, how is this gonna fit together? Like, what the hell is going on? So, and then I heard about these serials where it's literally episodes like a TV show, and they all come together to make a season, and I was like, well, that's what it is. So, and that would work for my story, and that's kind of when I was like, well, I guess traditional publishing is out. So so
Wake up, Big Five.
yeah. So I started focusing on that, and people seem to really like the shorter episodes. I do need to I've been studying story a lot this year and making sure that each episode is its own story, because I don't like the last two in part one are very much connected, and the first one in part two is also connected to those. But I try not to leave them as cliffhangers or anything like that. I like them to feel resolved, with some questions that you want to come back to find out the answers for, but each being their own cohesive story, and then having the season be its own story. And I have a plan for 3 seasons. 2 seasons are pretty fleshed out, and then the last season I have a rough idea. So I'm hoping to keep it going for a while anyway.
Now, a lot of your characters, like you said, like they were kidnapped or they deal with addiction, or abuse. And is it hard for you when you're writing these shorter pieces, that are sort of self-contained? Is it hard for you to develop the characters in that way, or do you think that it's easier?
In the moment, it seems easier, but as I'm looking back, I realize that I let some things fall, like that should have been I should have gone deeper into, like Jennifer Morgan's struggle with alcoholism is really important to the story, and I'd really like to make sure that it comes through as what it is, which is she I think in How to Get Arrested, she falls off the wagon, and she has her, I think, 5-year coin from AA, so she was like really on her way, and but she has a lot of demons that she's dealing with, and eventually you'll find out exactly why she ended up turning to alcohol to silence them, and why meeting Zurich and discovering all of this stuff was just a little bit too much for her, and she kind of uses alcohol like a crutch.
Literal demons now.
Yes, literal demons. So there are certain things that I wish I had been able to, and I think this can all be dealt with outlining. Like, this is one of the reasons that I started studying story, because I was like, I'm letting things fall to the wayside in these shorter pieces. Like, I'm like, look, she's an alcoholic, and I'm going to hint at these things that happened to her in the past, but I'm never going to let you know what happened about it. Well, I mean, I did a little bit in, because I talk about, like, why she's, her demons and stuff, and how to get arrested, and then we go in deeper into it in how to defend a damsel or babysitter or whatever. I was so, like, I had it by the time I came up with that title, so can you tell? But the reason that episode came about, and all of their fears come to the table, is because I felt like I had left things unresolved, so that was kind of my way of tying things up and letting you see what happens, but it is something that I need to pay attention to and be aware of as I move forward to make sure that things go as deep as they need to, without like beating the dead horse, you know.
Right.
And just, you know, keeping things organized, I think is the key. So in some ways, having the episodes allows me to explore more, but it also it's easy to lose things that way. So you have to pay attention.
Now, do you have a favorite episode that at least that's been published that's out yet?
I I've been thinking about this, and I go back and forth because I really like Damsel, because you get to explore everybody's fears, and you have this being that they can't defeat as the bad guy in that one, and she will come back. Like, make no mistake, I've already got plans for her. So she was a lot of fun to write. It's I don't want to give it away, because if you haven't read it, it's kind of a mystery until the end. But she really messes with the group and tries to tear them apart and plays on their fears, and it's just it was a lot of fun to write and to bring all of those things to the table, especially since Zurich seems like he's so tough and nothing will ever get to him, and then you find out that his biggest fear is something that's everybody's biggest fear, which is losing his family. And then you have more about Morgan and her past, which is fun. And then my other favorite is How to Get Kicked Out of School, which is where we focus on Trent. And that was fun because I don't get to go into Trent too much before. And I really like watching or getting to see him make a mistake, essentially, and the consequences. And then him meeting someone who he really wants, you know, he thinks this is someone he can really be with, while she's like, you're great, but I'm damaged goods, get away from me. So she has to deal with her self-worth and her fears, and he has to deal with the consequences of a mistake that they make. And it was just a really fun thing to write. So
I think one of my favorites, I do love How to Get Kicked Out of School. One of my favorites is How to Make a Monster, which is the bonus episode for people who haven't bought the omnibus. It's the bonus episode at the back of that. And I think just the change in setting was really fun to read. And also the hint that there's like, there might be spin-offs, maybe? Fingers crossed.
I really liked Tasha, and I'm thinking about a spin-off from that one. And also, I don't know if it'll be a whole series spin-off with the other demon hunters that you meet in How to Catch a Serial, no, How to Hunt a Hunter. Sorry, it's not out yet, but I already wrote it. So you meet more. You understand that there's more people like Zurich in the world who are fighting. And Tasha's really young, and I think that would actually be kind of a fun way to go about it, because we get to see her grow up, really. And I love her character, and her sister Simone, who's very I'm not gonna even acknowledge that this stuff exists. I'm going to school. I'm gonna be, I'm going to Ivy League school. This is, bye, see you later. I'm not dealing with this crap. If anything weird happens, I'll call Zurich and stick my fingers in my ears and go la 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 la. So I really liked How to Make a Monster because of the change of scenery. For those of you who don't know, Zurich and Morgan go to Charlotte to help Turner, who is the lawyer who helps Zurich get out of trouble and how to get arrested. And Zurich has a history with his daughters. He saved them when they were younger. They were really too young to be at a party, and so he saved them from the party, and then on the way home they got attacked by a ghoul, so he saved them from that. So they have a really good relationship, and they have like this kind of big brother relationship with him, but Tasha also kind of has a crush. And Tasha gets into trouble at a party, a high school party, where some of the people who invited her try to they claim that they're trying to bring their brother back, but really they're trying to create a demon. and she gets sucked into the middle of that, and Zurich comes to help her out. And really, she does a lot to help herself, which is one of the reasons that I really liked her as a character. Like, you know, and there's a small group that could potentially be spin-off material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was definitely like a edgier Buffy vibe going on. So.
She's also one of my first characters of color, so anyone who is of color and wants to read that and give me tips, then I would love it, because I grew up in New Hampshire, and
yeah, it's a little
it's
monochrome.
Hard. It is, and it's hard to it's scary to write something that, like, you want to get it right, you know. I want young women, I want all young women to look at Tasha and be like, I could be like that. But also see themselves in her, but especially young women of color, because there aren't a lot of role models in literature, unfortunately, right now. And that's changing.
Yeah.
I just bought Alyssa Cole's book, A Princess in Theory, and I'm so excited. Wait, let me just grab it so I can show you, because it's beautiful.
Don't knock over the sword that's behind you.
And I just read, there's this little snippet right in the front, which is an excellent idea for authors out there. I just read that piece because technically it's a book club book, so I can't read it until July, I think. It's so hard though, because it's so pretty, and it's just, there's a podcast, which I will link to in the bottom of this video, where you can listen to an interview with Alyssa Cole.
Oh, cool.
Because that's why I bought the book, is because I heard her on a podcast, and I was like, this is great. And she talks about there needing to be more princesses of color, which a lot of people are like, no, princess is bad. Don't call your daughter a princess. And I get it.
She wants to be a princess. She can be a princess.
Right. Like, I do understand where they're coming from, but Alyssa made some really good points, and I think everybody should think about that, which is that, like, I mean, even in, you know, Disney's Princess and the Frog, she's a regular girl who turns into a princess, which is great. And in this, thinks she's a regular girl, but she's actually a princess. She just doesn't, she thinks that it's like a scam when people tell her, which is what you would think, you know?
Right. I'm not princess material.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. It's like, you're kidding? Like, no. So I thought that was really a neat twist, and something that we need to see more of. So, and I would love to do that with Tasha, but I'm also scared to do that with Tasha. Right. So if anybody wants to reach out to me,
hire sensitivity readers.
I will. I'm gonna hire sensitivity readers for Tug, and if I do anything with Tasha, anything more with Tasha, which I want to, I will definitely hire a sensitivity reader. But from the planning perspective, I would just like to talk to people about stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, make sure that I don't make any bad assumptions.
I don't mean to be an asshole.
No, I don't want to be an asshole. In this, I don't want to be an asshole. Right.
I was gonna say, some of the stuff you do to your characters.
Sometimes they say be mean, and you are the meanest author, so... We'll talk about that in your interview.
So you're working on a new project that isn't related to the Starsborough Chronicles, and that's not a spin-off that I want so bad. What's that about?
It's Tales from the Salem Grimoire, and it is actually connected to the Starsborough Chronicles. Not in a typical way. It's there's a character that is connected, and that's Sunshine Lake. I always forget her name, because there's a character named Sunshine in one of the other books that I read, one of the series that I read, and her last name is Running Wolf, and I always want to say that for this, but it's different Sunshine. It's Sunshine Lake. And it's her coven, actually. It's Tales from the Salem Grimoire, and it's about just witches who are tied to Salem, and through their ancestors, the Salem witch trials. None of the actual witches were tried, but they accidentally caused that to happen. So it's basically the first 3 books are dealing with the consequences of the ancestors' actions. Well, the first 4, because in the first one, Salem Witch, it starts out with just kind of an introduction into the world, so you get to see the witches celebrating a solstice, and you meet Millicent and her daughter Grace, and then you see the witches' council, which is not council, the high witches. It sounds silly when you say it out loud. Like they're all sitting around smoking
I don't know,
pot.
sounds pretty good.
Yeah, actually. No, they're not that chill. So, and you meet Conti, and that name is tentative because she's Wampanoag. Is that how you say it?
Wampanoag.
Wampanoag. And she, and I want to make sure that the name fits with their language, and I do have a plan to reach out to someone about their language. So you meet her, and she is married to the son of a witch, so he doesn't have any powers, but she is therefore part of the coven. So she's trying to save her daughter, and the high witches say, no way, it's not going to happen. Abigail had a vision, and if we save your daughter, it'll be the end of the coven. And it's kind of vague but creepy. And Millie in the story, she is really close with Conti, and she doesn't want to see her daughter die, but she also owes her pretty big, so she ends up working with oh my gosh, I don't remember all of their names, but it's Conti, Millicent, Grace. Rain is Conti's older daughter, and 2 other witches and their daughters. And they save Mabel's life. And then Mabel, she seems fine, and then things start to go bad. She ends up becoming something, because there's always consequences to magic, and you save someone's life who wasn't supposed to be saved. So she ends up eating an entire village, to put it nicely. She needs hearts to survive, and it's kind of like one of those insatiable hunger kind of deals, and she ends up slaughtering an entire village. And then they have to deal with that. So meanwhile, there's a romance. This is a paranormal romance.
What a backdrop.
Yeah, surprise! Millie gets kicked out of the coven for helping, and she ends up living in Salem with Roger, who is the son of a witch, but he hates witches because he was ripped out of his mother's arms. There we go again. Because the Massachusetts coven needed more males, so basically what they do is, if they have too many females born in a year, they write to other covens to find one that has too many males, and then they swap. So, or the males are sent to where the females are.
The Bachelorette, Salem edition.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. But that's how they did it, because they didn't really value men, which leads to trouble later on. Or they didn't, that's an LA witch problem, which is the second book. So, yeah. She ends up falling in love with Roger, and Roger ends up falling in love with her, even though he doesn't like witches, and they end up standing up together to save Mabel and Conti, and it's a whole thing. Is that enough? Is that, too vague?
No,
I don't want to give everything away, but...
Yeah, no. You're fine.
Okay.
So where did the inspiration for this come from? Was it just reading about witches and stuff like that for the Starsborough Chronicles, or
no? This one's kind of funny. My sister and I are ridiculous. Let's start there. So we were on a walk, and my sister is arguably a little bit obsessed with her weight, a little bit on the bad side, I would say. And growing up, I started feeling I had like borderline issues with food. So I you know, I didn't ever actually become anorexic, but it was close enough that it was not okay. And so I try to kind of ignore Tara's obsession with weight, but also be supportive when she feels like she's doing well or whatever. So we were on a walk. We like to go on walks together. And we were talking about, I think it was like Thanksgiving and Christmas were coming up, and we were talking about all the food and how we wanted the food because we love food. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a potion you could take to eat all the food you wanted for like a day and not have it like negatively impact you? So if you eat too much sugar, then you don't get the negative impacts of sugar. And if whatever. But and so I was like, I was like, we need a witch who knows potions, and she could do this. And then I was like, but you know what? She'd probably live in LA because all the actors and actresses would like to eat all the food and not have to work out. Like they, you know how they take care of their bodies. It's like insane.
Yeah, take care of might be a stretch.
Yeah. So I was like, that's where she would live because she could sell this potion. And so that's where the idea for LA Witch came from. And she is, yes, connected to Salem in Massachusetts, but she lives in LA. She sells potions, one of which is to stars so that they can eat everything they want and not gain weight, or have the negative impact. And she also she started a microbrewery because there's a connection. When I started researching witches, there's this connection to witches and beer. Surprise! So she owns a microbrewery because I thought that would just be funny.
So not high witches, drunk witches.
Yeah. LA Witch is about drunk witches. No. So she does love her beer, which is something that I love and I like to bring forth with this particular book. But that's where it started. And then as I was learning Raven's story, that's her name, Ellie, which is Raven, and John is the hero in that one. I kind of liked, everyone was talking about how different fairy tales are different kinds of like either mental illness or abuse. And they talked about how Beauty and the Beast was Stockholm Syndrome. And I love Beauty and the Beast. Like, it's one of my absolute favorites. So I was like, well, I'm going to play with that. So he does end up kidnapping her in the beginning because he needs her to do something. But she doesn't have any power because one of the things that Millicent does is she transfers her power to Roger's family. So every generation, her family has less power and Roger's family has more power. So that comes through in LA Witch. So basically she can do potions and that's it. And she's really hated by the Coven because of her ancestors' actions. So that's why she moves to LA. She doesn't want to be part of it anymore. She put up with it, for 18 years. Right. And then John, his brother, is kidnapped, and he's told by the kidnappers that he needs to bring Raven to Massachusetts and break a spell that her ancestor made, that Millicent did. And when she says, I can't do magic, I can't break a spell that the most powerful witch in the world did, like, forget about it. Right. He kidnaps her and takes her
like
anyway.
You do?
Like you do, yeah. Like a guy who can't take no for an answer. Except, it's out of desperation, and obviously he's never mean towards her or anything like that. And once he kind of explains himself to her, and she finds out that the Coven is going to kill her because they've had enough of her crap, her and her family's crap, and if they kill her, then the line is ended, and they're safe.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, surprise. So she ends up, coming around, and then it's, So basically she has an opportunity to leave because I didn't want it to be too creepy. And she stays because, she's going to die or, the Coven's going to kill her. So.
Or else. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where that came from. As I was exploring that, sorry, I got off track. As I was exploring her, I realized that it was really to do with her ancestors. And I thought that writing Salem Witch would be kind of a fun introduction to the world. And through that, I actually ended up all the witches that take part in saving Mabel their ancestors have a trilogy.
Oh, cool.
So, well, Millicent and Conti's ancestors are the same trilogy. So there's 3 trilogies, 9 books total, 10 books for the whole series. And I'm doing them so they're standalone, so you can pick up any book at any time and understand what's happening. Because I like when series are connected, but also 9 books is a lot to get the full story. So I wanted them to be like kind of sets of 3 that go together, and then you get the whole thing if you like it. So
no George R.R. Martin for you.
No. Now, I write way faster too, so
I think everyone does.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So, other than Salem Witch, the sort of intro book, the rest of them are contemporary then?
Yes, that's one thing that kind of like Salem Witch is historical and the rest are contemporary, which is kind of like, I don't know if that's a great decision. But it just kind of worked out that way, and you don't have to read Salem Witch to read the rest of them. And if people really like the historical aspects of Salem Witch, then I might go into more historical paranormal romances in the future. I am doing a vampire series, which is also kind of connected to the witches, and actually I just came up with this last night, because the vampire ones are also city-based, so one of the potential titles is Viking vampire in Vegas. But I'm really excited. I don't know if it's going to be in Vegas, but I don't know if I can not put it in Vegas because of Viking vampires.
I guess you could do like Vancouver or...
See, I thought Vancouver. That was like the first one that I thought of, and I was like, I don't know. I guess I'll explore Vancouver and Vegas and then pick.
Vancouver says more like werewolf than vampire to me.
See, that's
just
me too. Just
because of like City of Sin, you know?
That's kind of that's what I was thinking. So, but I decided last night that Sunshine Lake is going to end up with a vampire, and the title is going to be Lost Vampire in Starsboro. So I'm pretty excited about that one, actually, because that's going to be kind of an introduction where we get to see what happens with Sunshine, but also we get to meet 3 vampires. So, for future books.
Now, don't the DeVordy brothers say vampires don't exist?
Yes, they do, which is actually, I'm really excited for when Zurich meets the vampires. That's totally happening. That's part of the thing. For people who haven't read all of the books, Zurich has an ability to transform. He doesn't know until it happens after a very traumatic event, which I will not mention. But he transforms into this kind of monster thing, and which is the premise of How to Hunt a Hunter. They're trying to catch him. So he does eventually learn how to control it, and that's gonna happen in the vampire one, because he's trying to kill a vampire, and he's like, well, let's go all out. Meanwhile, the vampire's like, what the fuck is that?
Role reversal.
Yeah. Because it's basically like, it's, the big bad, and it's never had to deal with anything, and it's also in my universe, I chose the vampires who are older are more powerful role. So you have vampires who are not as old and not as powerful, but they're like the good guys versus the guys who are older and more powerful. So
so these are paranormal romances.
Yes.
And I know you have some queer pairings in Starsboro. Are you going to have some of those in the series, or?
Yes, I haven't decided who is going to be, because that's kind of the because my sexual orientation is much more about personality than packaging. unfortunately, because of that, I kind of default to male-female pairings. I don't mean to, it just kind of happens. So I want to do, I know with the werewolf books, I'm going to have a polyamorous relationship between a female and two men. And I'm not sure if they're going to also have relations. I don't know yet. Because I'm toying with the idea of them being brothers, and if they're brothers, then that's not going to happen, obviously.
So kinky.
Too kinky! Anyway. So, I know that with the werewolves, definitely there's an F&F romance that's going to happen, and the polyamory one, and potentially an M&M romance. I haven't decided an M&M.
I went chocolate there.
I went to the rapper. Like, Slim Shady.
Featuring.
Anyway, so yeah, I am, and I do intend to, especially with the witches. I do want to have some F&F going on. But, and I know I want to do the polyamory with the wolves, but I don't know. Other than that, I'm not really sure. There is one vampire, and she's an Apache warrior. It's based off of, I just don't know how to pronounce this. Oh no, I do, because I heard it in a podcast. So if he pronounced it right, I'm going to pronounce it right. It's Goyen, who was this really awesome Native American woman. And so the vampire isn't actually Goyen, but she knew her in her life, and when she becomes a vampire, she takes on her persona and then kills the people who killed Goyen. Because cool. I didn't want to downplay Goyen's death in basically a camp, like a prisoner of war camp. She died.
Right.
So
Good
I
job,
wanted... Yeah. So I wanted to talk about that, and I have a lot of Native American... or Native American Indian people, and I wanted to include that. So I have an Apache warrior vampire, and I'm thinking that she's going to be gay, but again, this is all very preliminary, so right. I do intend to have queer pairings, though, in each of the series. So the witches will have some, the werewolves will have some, and the vampires will have some.
So, unless if there's other topics you want to broach there, do you want to talk a little bit about your short story for Beamed Up?
Yes, I do. So the reason I get so excited is because this kind of sick fascination that I have with serial killers. And I get to play with that in this one.
The first step is admitting you have a problem.
Well, once upon a time, I wanted to work for the FBI and help profile and catch serial killers. This was my dream. So this is my way of realizing that dream. I am writing a FBI agent who, that's what she does. Because it's science fiction, she is, her memories have been uploaded into an android body, and this is how people of the future have attained immortality. I used science fiction more as a setting. In this, I realized it's kind of a serial killer thriller. She's not the main character. The main character is Chester, and he just lost his family. He is a former member of the mob in Boston. It's set in Boston. I haven't figured out the exact dates, but it's probably like 200 years in the future ish. So he loses his family in a horrible robbery gone bad. He owns a meat shop in Boston, and so he tries to kill himself because he can't handle the grief. And it starts the morning after his failed suicide attempt. And he discovers shortly after leaving the hospital that it might not have been an accident, and they might have been targeted by enemies that he made when he was in the mob.
It's very thrillery.
Yeah. And in the process of him investigating, he and Ruth is investigating this serial rapist, murderer guy who's plaguing Boston. and their investigations end up being connected, and they end up working together. And it's called False Hope because Ruth is at a point in her life where she doesn't believe in the good of humanity anymore, and she's ready to die. She's been alive for about 200 plus years, and she's just ready for it to be over. And Chester feels like the world isn't worth being in if he can't be with his family, and so he's tried to kill himself. And they kind of form this unlikely partnership and basically end up giving each other reasons to live through friendship. It's not romantic.
For once.
Yeah. And actually that started because of the relationship between Trent and Morgan, which I really like, which is just friends. But they're also like really snuggly with each other. Like if they need love, they can go to each other. Like not actual love, but like just snuggles and
platonic.
Like, I had a bad day. And I really liked that relationship. And there aren't a lot of platonic relationships that I think are that close, and that's what I like. They're like brother sister, like, and that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted a sibling kind of relationship to form between Chester and Ruth. So.
Now, between the Starsborough Chronicles and this short, you have a lot of really grim topics. Is that your outlook on the world, or are you trying more to show like it's bad but it's okay and it's gonna get better?
That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
It's because like everything is kind of dark and there is bad, but what I'm trying to showcase is that there's good too, and that there's decent people in the world. And even though some people are bad and make bad choices, there's people who are always going to be there to kind of pick up the pieces and help get things back to normal or safe or whatever.
Well, I can sort of see that in the teamwork and stuff in Starsborough. So
that's what I'm trying to kind of, because sometimes it does feel like the world is complete crap, and like, I just wanted to be like, it's not all crap, So
polishing the turd.
Yes, put some gold on that sucker.
Yeah. That reminds me of that photograph of all the trash bags, and one of them's like gold leaf trash bag.
Oh God.
I don't know, that's circulating the internet somewhere.
I haven't seen
that's
it.
Decades old. But yeah. Well, I think that's about it time wise.
I think so. Yeah, we've gone pretty long here. So
yeah, pretty in depth. It's almost like I know you.
I can't help it because I just really like talking about my books. That's why I like.
It's your job.
That's why with doing interviews, I'm surprised when I have to kind of pull stuff out of authors, because I'm like, don't you want to talk about your books?
Yeah.
Aren't you excited?
Well, I think it's it's hard because we get used to like, I don't want to toot my own horn, like I don't want to come across as vain and like this is the best thing that's ever been written, because obviously not the case. But
right.
It's sort of, it's that line you got to walk.
Yeah, but if someone's interviewing you about your book, walk it. Talk about stuff. Like, people want to know. Like, if you're going to talk about your favorite book or your favorite character, like, talk about them. Tell us where they came from. Tell us about them. Like, we want to know.
Yeah.
So, I hope everyone left feeling like they know about my stuff now.
Well, I know more than I did this morning, so
that's pretty impressive because I kind of tell you everything.
It's okay. Sometimes I forget things. But yeah, so thanks for chatting with me, and I guess this has been the Amphibian Press podcast, switching it up, role reversal edition, and I hope that you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe for more.